I didn't even think.
You just slapped the man that could have saved your company.
Sir, I'm so sorry. I just didn't realize it was you.
Oh my God.
Fuck.
The sound came before the thought did. Skin against skin. It cracked across the ballroom louder than the string quartet, louder than the champagne toasts, louder than anything I'd said all night. For 1 full second, nobody moved. Not the waiters, not the guests, not even him. My hand was still raised, his head was still turned from the force of it, and 200 people who 10 seconds earlier had been laughing about hedge funds and real estate were now staring at me like they were watching something end. I didn't know it yet, but they were right. Something was ending. My company, my name, and my idea of who I was. I just didn't know his name yet. That was the whole problem. Let me back up, because you need to understand exactly how a person ends up here. Hand stinging, life about to collapse, before you'll believe I didn't see it coming. My name doesn't matter as much as what I was about to lose. 3 generations of my family's company, a mid-sized manufacturing firm my grandfather built out of a single warehouse, was 11 days from missing payroll. Not late, missed, as in envelopes with nothing in them. We'd been quietly shopping for a lifeline for 4 months. 2 banks had already passed. A private equity firm wanted 70% of the company for pennies on true value, which my board correctly called what it was, a hostile bleed-out dressed up in a term sheet. There was one name left on the list, a private investor. No public profile, no press, works entirely through intermediaries, known in finance circles mostly by reputation and rumor. The kind of investor people describe using words like quiet and serious, and more than once, impossible to read. My CFO, Patricia, had spent 6 weeks trying to get a meeting. What she got instead was an email. He'll be at the Whitlock Gala Saturday. He goes to a few of these a year. If he's interested, you'll know. That was it. No name confirmed, no photo, just he'll be there, and if the company matters to him, he'll find you. I grew up understanding exactly one lesson from my father, who inherited this company from his father. Appearances are the business. You dress like money, you talk like money. People extend you credit, literal and social, because they assume you already have it. I learned to walk into a room and read who mattered in 4 seconds flat. Watch, jacket, shoes, posture. I'd never been wrong. I didn't know yet that Saturday night I was going to be catastrophically wrong in front of everyone in the worst possible way. The Whitlock estate sits on 11 acres outside the city, and my wife Diane and I arrived early enough to walk the grounds before the string quartet even set up. Diane squeezed my hand in the car. "You've barely slept in a week," she said. "I'll sleep after Saturday." "You mean after tonight?" "Tonight is Saturday, Diane." She let it go, but I saw her face. She'd been watching me get sharper and thinner and more brittle for a month, the way people get right before they either fix something or break it. By 8, the ballroom was full. 200 guests, the kind of crowd where every third person is either already rich or about to be. I worked the room the way I always did. Handshake, eye contact, a joke that landed, a compliment that cost nothing. I was good at this. I'd always been good at this. I watched my assistant, Elijah, wave off a young valet who'd asked where to park a very ordinary sedan. Elijah said, "Around back with the staff cars." Not even looking at him. I didn't correct it. I didn't think about it at all. 20 minutes later, near the coat check, an older man in a plain gray suit asked one of my board members, Richard, where the restroom was. Richard pointed him toward the kitchen hallway, the wrong direction, the staff direction, without breaking his conversation. The man just nodded and walked off. Nobody thought twice, including me. I'm telling you these 2 moments now because they mattered. They were rehearsals for what I did an hour later. Small, forgettable disrespect, aimed at anyone who didn't look like they belonged. I didn't invent the pattern that night. I just gave it a hand. Diane noticed things I didn't. She always had. Somewhere around 9, she pulled me aside near the terrace doors. "That man Richard sent toward the kitchen," she said. "I watched him walk the wrong way for a full minute before he figured it out himself. Nobody said a word. It's a big house, Diane. People get turned around. That's not what I mean, and you know it." She was watching my face when she said it, waiting for something. I didn't give it to her. I was already thinking about Patricia's email, about the 11 days, about whether the man who could save us was even in the building yet. I'll find him a proper direction if I see him again, I said, already moving past her toward a cluster of board members near the bar. I didn't find him again, not until it no longer mattered. I noticed him because he was standing too still. Everyone else at that party moved in a current, toward the bar, toward the important people, toward wherever the next conversation might be useful. He stood near the tall windows at the edge of the room, hands in his pockets, watching. Not nervous watching, patient watching. Like a man reading a room he'd already read 100 times before. Plain dark coat, no tie, no watch worth noting, nothing on him that said money. He was black, maybe 60, quiet in a way that in that room, that night, read to me as out of place rather than composed. I want to be honest about the exact shape of the thought I had, because sanitizing it now would be its own kind of lie. The thought was, who let him in? Not who is he? Not maybe he's someone. Who let him in? I walked over. I told myself I was being a good host, checking on a guest who looked lost. That's the lie people tell themselves right before they do something ugly. They dress it up as responsibility. Can I help you find someone? I asked. Polite. Performing politeness for the 3 or 4 people near enough to hear it. I'm exactly where I mean to be. Calm. Almost amused. That should have told me something. It didn't. This is a private event, I said. Invitation only. I'm aware. I'm going to need to see it. He looked at me for a moment. Not angry. Almost curious. Like he was deciding something about me in real time. I don't carry one, he said. I was told my name would be enough. And here's where I want you to understand exactly how far pride can walk a person off a cliff. Because I heard those words, my name would be enough, and I decided he was lying. Not because it sounded like a lie, because I couldn't picture a version of the truth where a black man in a department store coat, standing alone at my investor's gala, was someone whose name opened doors. I called Curtis, our head of security. This gentleman needs an escort out. Sir, I haven't confirmed anything is wrong, the man said, still even, still calm. And something about that composure made it worse, made it feel like disrespect, like he thought he was above the situation I was putting him in. You're trespassing, I said, louder now, aware the room was starting to turn. I'm not. Then prove it. He didn't move to prove anything. He just held my eyes, and something in that stillness, the audacity of it, I thought then, the sheer audacity of a man not scrambling to justify himself to me, snapped something loose, in a week that had already snapped nearly everything else loose. Caleb, Diane said behind me, low, a warning in it I didn't hear as a warning. I slapped him. Elijah was closest. I saw his face in the half-second after. Not shock at the stranger, shock at me. Like he was seeing something he'd suspected was in there for years finally step into the light. He didn't say anything. He just looked down at his own hands. The ones that 20 minutes earlier had waved a valet toward the staff lot without a second thought. And I think some part of him understood, faster than I did, exactly what thread connected that small moment to this one. For about 90 seconds, I actually believed I'd done the right thing. Security moved in around him, not roughly, but firmly, walking him toward the side entrance. A few guests near me actually murmured approval. One man, a board member's husband, clapped me on the shoulder and said, "Good instinct. Can't be too careful these days." Like I'd caught a pickpocket instead of struck a stranger across the face. Diane's hand was tight on my arm, but I read that as support, not the horror it actually was. You handled that, Richard said. These parties get infiltrators sometimes. I nodded like a man who'd defended something. I actually felt tall for those 90 seconds. Proud, like I had protected the room, protected my family's name, protected the fragile, desperate thing my company had become. I had no idea I had just done the one thing that could turn 11 days of desperation into 0 days of anything at all. Patricia found me by the bar maybe 4 minutes later, and she'd gone the color of the tablecloths. "What did you just do?" she said. Not a question, an accusation dressed as one. Some guy tried to crash the "what did he look like?" Something in her voice made me actually answer instead of deflecting. 60-ish? Gray coat? Quiet? Why? She grabbed her phone, hands shaking slightly, and pulled up an email, the same vague email from 6 weeks ago. He'll be at the Whitlock Gala Saturday. If he's interested, you'll know. Patricia, there's no photo attached to that. There's a name in the header you never scrolled down to read, she said, and turned the phone toward me. I want to tell you I felt my stomach drop, but that's too gentle a phrase. It wasn't a drop, it was a floor disappearing. I didn't recognize the name because I'd never bothered to learn it, never needed to in a life where I assumed importance always announced itself in a jacket cut at a watch face. But Patricia had done her homework 6 weeks ago, while I was too busy being confident in my own instincts. Where is he? I said, being walked out the side door by the man you sent to walk him out the side door. I found him in the code check hallway. Curtis still half a step behind him, looking like a man you suspected he'd just been handed a career-ending mistake and was too polite to say it out loud yet. Sir, I said, and my voice came out smaller than I wanted it to. I think I made a mistake. He turned. His cheek still carried a faint red mark, and something about seeing physical proof on an actual human face of what my hand had done, made the whole night suddenly very real in a way it hadn't been 30 seconds earlier. Mistakes are usually smaller than that, he said. I didn't know who you— I know you didn't, he said. That was rather the point of standing quietly by a window instead of announcing myself the moment I arrived. I wanted to see how this family treats people it doesn't think it needs to impress. He paused. Now I have. Please, I said, and I heard myself actually say please, a word I don't think I'd used sincerely in a decade. The company, the contract, I need to explain. You don't need to explain, he said. I watched you explain yourself quite clearly already, with your hand. Patricia arrived behind me breathless. Mr. Whitfield, I am so deeply— Save it, he said, not unkindly, but final. I'll say this once so everyone in this hallway hears it the same way. He looked past me, at Curtis, at Richard, who drifted over to see what the commotion was. I came here tonight because a company I was prepared to save asked me to. I came quietly in a coat I've had for 11 years because I wanted to see this family the way they behave when they think no one important is watching. He looked back at me. Now everyone important is watching, including 200 phones, I'd imagine, given how many were raised in that ballroom. I hadn't even thought about that. I turned. Through the archway, I could see it. A wall of screens, still lit, still recording. Guests who drifted close enough to catch the second act. The investment is withdrawn, he said. Effective now. I'll have my office confirm in writing by morning so there's no ambiguity for your board. Mr. Whitfield, please, there are 500 employees who— There were 500 employees an hour ago, too, he said. You didn't think about them when you decided a black man standing quietly by a window was a threat to your party. I'd ask you not to invoke them now to save yourself. He turned to leave, then stopped and said the thing that would end up quoted in every article written about that night for the next 6 months. You didn't slap a stranger tonight, he said. You slapped the last hand that was going to catch your company before it hit the ground. I hope the 2 seconds of certainty you felt doing it were worth what comes next. He walked out through the front doors into a black car that had been waiting the whole time. The room did not go back to normal. It couldn't. Word moves through a party like that faster than sound. By the time I turned back around, small clusters of guests were already whispering, phones angled, a few people quietly gathering coats of their own, the particular flavor of departure reserved for parties that have curdled into something people don't want to be photographed near. Patricia grabbed my arm. I need you to understand something right now, tonight, not tomorrow, she said. That wasn't a maybe. That was the only realistic offer on the table. Everything else was pretend. I know. Do you? Because at about 6 hours, this is going to be a video with a caption on it, and it is going to travel faster than any statement we could possibly write. She was right about the timeline. She was wrong about 6 hours. It took 90 minutes. By midnight, a 14-second clip was circulating, My hand connecting, his head turning, the room's held breath. No context, no names, just the moment. Captions by someone in that ballroom. Rich guy just slapped an old black man at a party for standing near a window. By 2 a.m., someone had identified him. By 4 a.m., someone had connected the dots to my company. By sunrise, it had a headline, and the headline wrote itself the way headlines do when the footage does all the work for you. The emergency call came at 7 a.m. I hadn't slept. Diane hadn't spoken to me since the car ride home, not out of cruelty, but because she genuinely didn't know what to say to the man she'd apparently been sitting next to for 15 years without fully seeing. 6 board members, 1 screen. Richard, the same man who told Mr. Whitfield the wrong direction to the restroom 4 hours before it mattered, was the first to speak, and his voice had none of the warmth from the party in it. "The investment is gone," he said. "Confirmed in writing at 6 this morning, legal counsel. I know. Do you understand what that means for payroll in 11 days? I know what it means, Richard. I don't think you do, because if you did, I don't see how you do what you did last night." Nobody defended me. Not one voice on that call. Patricia stayed silent, which from her was its own kind of verdict. Monday morning, our stock, privately held but tracked closely by 2 trade publications that covered the sector, was the subject of 3 separate articles before 10 a.m. 2 clients called to pause ongoing contracts pending a clearer picture of leadership. A third canceled outright, their statement citing alignment with our company values, which is the corporate way of saying, we don't want to be near this. Employees started talking, not to press, but to each other, in group chats that eventually got screenshotted anyway. A shift supervisor who'd worked the floor for 22 years posted something that got shared 4,000 times. "I've watched this family walk past people like me my whole career. Guess we finally know how they see us when they think the cameras are off." That one hurt worse than the stock price. The stock price I understood. That comment I earned in a different currency entirely. Elijah resigned Tuesday morning, before anyone asked him to. He left a note on my desk instead of saying it to my face, and I understood why. It said in full, "I told a man to park with the staff because of how he looked, 20 minutes before you did something worse for the same reason. I should have said something then. I'm sorry it took this to teach me that." I never spoke to him again. I think about that note more than almost anything else that day. Tuesday night, Diane finally said the things she'd been carrying since the car ride home. She said, "I keep replaying it. We were sitting in the kitchen, neither of us eating the dinner in front of us. I said your name before you did it. Caleb. I said it like a warning, and some part of me knew exactly what was coming, and I still didn't get there fast enough to stop it. That's not on you." She said, "I'm not asking you to tell me it's not on me. I'm telling you what I saw in you a half second before it happened, because I don't think you've asked yourself that question yet. I saw a man who'd already decided. Before the hand moved, you'd already decided who he was. I've watched you read a room in 4 seconds 100 times and call it instinct. I never thought about what instinct is actually built out of until Saturday." I didn't have an answer for her. I still don't fully. It's the closest she came that whole week to telling me she was reconsidering something more permanent than a dinner reservation. And I understood sitting there that whatever came next in our marriage would be decided by things I hadn't done yet, not by anything I could say that night. By Wednesday, I had a lawyer whose retainer alone made me flinch, explaining to me, patiently, that striking someone in front of 200 witnesses and a phone-shaped wall of evidence left almost no room to maneuver. Assault, battery, technically, in the civil sense. The kind of case that doesn't need a clever attorney because the facts do all the arguing. Mr. Whitfield's team didn't rush. On Thursday, a formal letter arrived. Not a lawsuit, just a demand. A written public apology, entered into the record alongside a settlement figure that existed less as punishment and more as a documented acknowledgement, in the same way Patricia had once explained a paper trail exists to make truth undeniable rather than to make anyone rich. I signed it. There wasn't a version of that week where I didn't. I asked to see him one more time, not through lawyers, in person if he'd allow it. He agreed, which surprised me more than almost anything else that week. We met at a small diner near his office, not a boardroom, not neutral ground chosen by an assistant, his choice, deliberately unglamorous, and I understood the choice itself was a message. You didn't have to agree to this, I said. No, he said. I didn't. Why did you? He considered the question longer than I expected. Because I know exactly what it looks like from the other side of that hand, he said. I grew up in a house where my father worked 2 jobs and still got stopped walking home in his own neighborhood because someone decided he looked like he didn't belong there. I didn't build what I built to prove people like you wrong. I built it so my son would never have to prove anything to anyone. And then I walked into your ballroom Saturday and watched exactly the thing I built my whole life to protect him from happen to me at 61 years old, in a suit I chose specifically so nobody would notice me. He paused. So no, I didn't come here for an apology. I came because I wanted to see if you'd actually understood anything yet, or if you were just afraid of what happens next. I don't know which one it is yet, I admitted. Honestly, that's the first honest thing you've said to me, he said, and for the first time something in his face eased, just slightly. Good. Sit with not knowing for a while. Most men in your position skip straight to feeling sorry for themselves. At least you're not doing that. My wife asked me something I couldn't answer. She asked what instinct is actually built out of, and I've been turning it over, and I still don't have a real answer. I could give you one, he said. But you wouldn't believe it coming from me the way you'd believe it if you sat with it yourself. Instinct is just memory wearing a disguise. Every fast decision you've ever made about a person, you learned somewhere, from someone, a long time before you ever needed to use it. The work isn't apologizing for the hand. The work is going back and finding out who taught you to trust it. He didn't accept my apology that day. He also didn't reject it. He told me, simply, that some things aren't his to forgive on behalf of everyone who's ever had a hand raised at them for standing quietly somewhere they had every right to stand, and that if I wanted the apology to mean something, it would have to survive contact with a life that no longer had his money in it to make things easy. Then he paid for his coffee, and mine, and left. 6 months later, the company survived. Smaller. Payroll made it, barely, through a combination of Patricia working sources I didn't know she had, and a bridge loan that cost us equity we'll be paying down for a decade. We lost 40% of our staff. Richard resigned from the board rather than face the shareholder questions that were coming either way. I stepped down as CEO. Not forced out, not exactly. But the writing on the wall was legible enough that resigning first felt like the only remaining decision that was actually mine to make. Patricia runs the company now. Her first policy change, framed and hung by the front entrance where every guest and every employee walks past it, was simple. No one is ever again to be treated as a suspect in this building based on how they look standing still. Diane and I are still married, though still married undersells how much rebuilding that took. She didn't leave. She also didn't pretend nothing had changed. Some nights I catch her watching me the way you watch someone you're still deciding whether you fully know. Mr. Whitfield's company didn't need my apology to keep thriving. He never spoke publicly about that night beyond the one line reporters eventually got from him outside a building downtown when someone shouted whether he'd ever reconsider the investment. I don't do business with people who decide who deserves respect before they decide anything else about them. That's not punishment, that's just information. Then he got in his car and drove away. And that clip outlived every other piece of coverage from that week combined. I think about the 2 seconds before I raised my hand more than I think about almost anything else in my life now. Not the 11 days of desperation, not the board call, not even the money, which is the part everyone assumes haunts a person like me most. It's the 2 seconds. The certainty. How fast and how comfortable it was to look at a quiet, composed man standing by a window and decide instantly, without one shred of evidence, exactly what he was and exactly what he wasn't. I was wrong about who he was. I wasn't wrong by accident. I was wrong because I'd built an entire way of reading rooms, reading people, on assumptions I'd never once had to question because they'd never once cost me anything. I did go back the way he told me to. I asked my father once over a phone call I nearly hung up on twice before he answered, where I'd learned to read a room the way I did: watch, jacket, shoes, posture. He laughed like it was a compliment. "Your grandfather taught me," he said. "I taught you. It's kept this family safe for 3 generations, Caleb. Why are you asking me this now, of all times?" I didn't have the heart to tell him what it had actually cost us, or that safe and right had never once been the same word. We'd just never been forced to notice the difference. They cost me everything in the end, just not in the order I expected. Here's the thing I need you to sit with, because this story, Grace's story, Gerald's story, mine tonight, none of it is really about the money or the company or even the investor. It's about the 2 seconds before the hand goes up, the look, the assumption, the decision made about a person before they've said a single word. That part isn't fiction, and it isn't rare. It happens in boardrooms and grocery stores and sidewalks most days to real people. And most of the time, there's no 90-minute video to force a reckoning. Most of the time, the person just absorbs it and goes home. So here's my honest question for you, and I want you to actually sit with it before you answer. If you were standing in that hallway, in that ballroom, before anyone knew who he was, would you have said something? Or would you have clapped him on the shoulder and told him he handled it well? Be honest in the comments. And if this one hit you somewhere, share it with someone who needs the reminder that the quietest person in the room is very often the one holding everything, and the 2 seconds it takes to judge them is never, ever worth what it costs. Thanks for watching. This story was made and produced by Akavox. And don't forget to like and subscribe.